We check in here on Yahoo after UFC 127, just a couple hours after the event ended, and we wanted to talk with Adam Hill from the Las Vegas Review-Journal about Jon Fitch and BJ Penn. Adam, what do you think of the decision?
You know what? I had a problem with the decision. I kind of suspected it might be a draw because I thought they might be giving BJ round two. But I had a 29-27 Fitch. I certainly gave him 10-8 in the third round. That was about as dominating as a round as you can see. And I think some of the numbers in the aftermath told you that if you didn't see it already. And I thought Fitch did enough in the second round to win the second round, especially the last minute. He completely took control of what was a close round, and I thought should have earned the judges' favor in that round. So I thought 29-27. It wasn't the worst decision of all time, but I think certainly Fitch should have got the benefit of the doubt there.
I agree with you. I thought the second round, I was as I was watching it, I thought with about minute and a half left that Penn was about to go potentially up 2-0. But Fitch in the final minute and a half did so much damage that he stole the round back. It's pretty rare for that to happen, but I thought he stole the round back.
Yeah, and that's the way I was leaning too. I thought like you said, about that same point, a minute and a half left in the round, I thought, wow, BJ's going to be up 2-0. Fitch is going to have to finish this fight, which is certainly not his strong suit in the third round to win this. But then I did think he took control at the end of the round, and in that last minute and a half, I won't say stole it, but I think took control of the round, exerted his will, and did enough there down the stretch in the second round to win. Probably should have been an even fight going to the third round, and certainly no question about who won the third round, and I don't think there's any question that it was a 10-8.
No, there is no question that it was a 10-8. Now, the judges don't have the benefit of seeing the striking stats, but I mean, the numbers on CompuStrike and Fight Metric, forget about it at that point. It's absolutely a 10-8.
Yeah, and I think we've seen those numbers now, and Fitch landed, 837 shots in the third round? It was out of control, and, one service has Penn landing 2 shots, one has him landing 0. Either way you look at it, he was outstruck by about 150 punches in the third round, so if you don't give that a 10-8 round, you probably don't give 10-8 rounds ever.
It was 134-0 by Fight Metric, or check that with CompuStrike. It was 149-2 with Fight Metric, and then even if you go back to the end of the second round, it looked like the second round was roughly like almost 60-15 according to one of the services, so that would be the defense on picking Fitch in that second round. All right, so the reaction on this, there was a lot of booing. First of the decision, but then almost, I guess you would say, message board booing up on the web. People, again, killing Jon Fitch. He didn't win by decision this time, but it went to decision. So just about every fight he's had recently, the last couple of years, goes to decision. And, people just want to kill Fitch. I thought he did enough to win. Did he finish the fight? No, but he beat the living hell out of him.
Yeah, if you're going to get a decision, and like you said, we're talking about a draw here, so it's not one that he won. But if you're going to win decisions, this is how you win decisions. You pound on somebody for an entire round like he did. Granted, he didn't do enough in the first round, and apparently he didn't do enough in the second round, even though we both think he did. But you can't fault him for a decision like this. It's not like he laid on him for an entire round. He went out and thrashed him for the entire third round, so you can't fault him for this one. But there's times in the past you could fault him for not putting on exciting fights. He does what he does. He grinds out victories. That's the perfect term for it. But the bottom line is he wins. And that's what the name of the game is. It is still a sport, and it is still about wins and losses. And you can't argue with his record. The guy who wins almost every time he goes out there, his record is unbelievable. So, do you fault teams in the NFL that are defensive teams that win every game? No. The Super Bowl counts just the same. I realize that you have to sell pay-per-views and you have to be somewhat willing to put on a show for the fans. But in the end, it is a sport, and it is about winning, and that's what he does.
Penn, after the fight, clearly thought that he lost the fight. What do you think of his game plan? Because Fitch gave him credit that he mixed it up and he screwed Fitch up a little bit, and he did score takedowns and he did threaten some submissions, but he also employed a very taxing style to where possibly he was going to be gassed in the third round and Fitch's size would take over, and it did.
Yeah, you're right, but at the same time, I fully expected Fitch to go in and dominate all 3 rounds the way he did the third round, so you can't really fault BJ for going in there and doing what he wanted to do in the first round. Fitch was completely caught off guard. He said he didn't prepare defensive wrestling at all, and that's what BJ did. I was shocked by it, stunned that that's what he chose to do, but it was effective. I mean, the guy, he got down, he had him in position to maybe get a choke or a submission in the first round, and you can't fault him for almost getting a victory there, because I don't think he had much of a chance if he went in and fought straight up, tried to box him, which is usually what BJ likes to do somewhat. We've seen in the last few fights. I think Fitch goes in, takes him down, and we see what we saw in the third round earlier if BJ did that.
Now, we don't know what Dana White thought about the fight. We don't know what matchmaker Joe Silva thought of the fight. There have been fights in the past where they've disagreed with the decision and said, "Screw it, we think this happened, so we're just going to advance guys the way we feel the result really was." Tough to read them. Do they look at this and go, "Hey, Jon Fitch won the fight. He is the number one contender," or are we now in this confusing state in the welterweight division?
Well, we're in a confusing state no matter what. If you really want to be honest about it, obviously what they want to happen is George St. Pierre wins in Toronto, moves up to middleweight, fights Anderson Silva. The belt is abandoned, and at that point, you do have a lot of question marks. If Jake Shields wins, guess what? Who's the number one contender? George St. Pierre is. So you don't even have the question to deal with anymore there. So clearly, there's going to be a cloudy title picture. What happens here? I would expect Fitch and Penn to fight again. I fully expect that to happen. But you never know. You never know with these guys. They changed their mind 3 times on the same night after Maynard and Edgar. So we saw that already. I think these guys will fight again, possibly for the title. Because if you look at the schedule, they might be fighting in May or June. And if St. Pierre has moved up and abandoned the title at that point, I wouldn't be shocked if they then came out and said, "Okay, Fitch Penn, this is for the title," because it'll already be scheduled if they're going to have a rematch, and there would be no champion at that point. So I wouldn't be shocked by that at all.
Yeah, I think that's a tough sell on BJ Penn's side. First of all, I think Fitch won the fight. Secondly, out of a draw, and he knocked out Matt Hughes, who's still a good fighter, but certainly not a top contender at 170. I think other guys deserve to be in on that. So let's assume GSP beats Jake Shields. What do you think of my suggestion that maybe they set up a little tournament? It's not a one-night tournament, but you could have it on the same card. You could have essentially semifinals on the same card leading to a final later in the year, and you pick the 4 guys. If you want to I think Fitch has to be in it. Penn is probably in it because he just got a draw with the guy who most people have as a number 2, 170 in the world, and from there, maybe you see how Shields does in this GSP fight if it's close, as long as he doesn't get blown out, and maybe a Carlos Condit. And after that, I don't know. I mean, I would love to see Josh Koscheck in it on one side of the bracket and Fitch on the other. But is there any possibility they entertain a tournament?
I think anything's a possibility at this point. Like we've been saying, it's a very cloudy picture, and it's all focused on the fact that the title may be abandoned coming up. It's a wacky situation they have on the horizon. I think that's a fine idea. The problem is then you're saying it's tough to sell Penn and Fitch off a draw as a title fight. Well, it's also going to be tough to sell Jake Shields as fighting for a title with 1 win if he's off a loss in some kind of tournament. I think that it would be fair because the loss would be to George St. Pierre, who everybody in the division has lost to, so you can't really fault him for that. But like I said, it'll be a crazy situation to shake out. I still think the way the schedule works out, I'm not going to be totally shocked if this rematch is for the title.
Well, as I mentioned, if Shields were going to go into title contention after this, if he lost the 129 fight to GSP, it's going to have to be competitive. It's going to have to be close. If he gets blown out of the octagon, then forget about it. So we'll see. We find out in April at UFC 129 if GSP is moving on to what he views as greener pastures, and it's a wide open welterweight class. Either way, I still believe that the promotion looks at Jon Fitch as kind of a nightmare as the top contender for this title. But they're going to have to deal with it. He's now won 13 of 14 non-GSP fights, and he deserves to be in the mix.
The guy just wins, and that when you get down to it, yeah, it's nice to be exciting. It's nice to be a guy that sells pay-per-views, but it is about winning, and he definitely has done enough winning to get another shot at the title. First time he got a shot was not pretty. It wasn't good, but that's the only fight he's lost. So, the guy's got to be right there. Obviously, he's in the mix. I think he's the number 1 contender, even off of a draw. It's just going to be a crazy situation. And let's not forget, I mentioned it. Let's say Shields does win. Then it's even crazier because obviously St. Pierre would deserve a rematch, I would think.
Oh, certainly. No doubt about it. That changes everything. All right. Adam, we appreciate it. You can check out Adam's work up on the web at lvrj.com, locally here in Las Vegas, and buy the hard copy, as we like to call it, the paper, Las Vegas Review-Journal. He also does a local radio show in Las Vegas, midnight to 1 a.m. on 720 KDON. You can hear the stream of that. And he's on Twitter at Adam Hill LVRJ. Adam, thank you.
Yeah, go home, loser.